My house was burnt. I'd had my husband missing for 5.5 years, which was even worse. And even now, I remember, I try not to, but when you talk about it, it brings back the memories, makes you want to weep. And you've got to try and keep it together, because no way are you turning into a victim for the sake of the fact that those people falsely accused you. But it needs telling. The stories need telling. Back in 1998, when my husband, who'd recently learnt to do the computer, decided to go on the internet, and as he was looking around on ordinary sites, along with a friend, the friend used to have access to the computer, he was learning with him, and suddenly they came up with pornography sites, which were not nice, and all they put in was ordinary words. And because of this, my husband then wrote to the government, wrote to the local paper, the MEP, the MP, to tell them that he was disgusted about this issue and it should be banned, because if they found it so easy, accidentally, so would youngsters find it easy. So he complained on that in the back end of 1998. Come 1999, suddenly we had the police at our house, and they took away 2 of our computers. They kept them for some 6 weeks. They'd found nothing on them, and my husband went in to collect them, and a certain CID officer turned round to him and said, well, we're going to get you. And they did. The following year, 1999, they arrested my husband for abuse against 3 youngsters, and they arrested me for aiding and abetting. And the youngsters never said I had done anything. Well, one of them had said I was present at a particular time. Now, these youngsters were all from dysfunctional families, and those dysfunctional families, I was teaching them, and they were visiting our house on occasion to meet up with our daughter. But after they had made the allegations, my husband and I were arrested and taken down to the police station, as one is, to be interviewed. And we were held there for quite a long time. We then came back, and my husband was shortly after charged. I was just held on bail for further investigations. The upshot of that was my husband was charged. I had the allegations dropped against me, and in the August of 2000, he was taken to court. Now, this was at the time that Sarah Payne, abuser, was being tried. So the media fallout was extremely high, and it affected us as well. Your head gets lost. You don't know whether you're coming or going. I'm very pragmatic. I've been brought up to be strong, not show my feelings. But in this instance, I sort of blabbed to the press because I was writing for the local press on a voluntary basis. And of course, I believed that the press would tell the truth, but unfortunately they didn't. So of course, with lies in the press and being accused, it's so devastating. You don't know whether you're coming or going. I was able to manage to work at night at my job for a short time. That kept me sane, but it's devastating. Even now, 15 years later, there are certain things I cannot do or cannot go. I still can't go to the village that I lived in because it's traumatic. The end of that trial, despite evidence to the contrary that we had, my husband was found guilty on 2 counts instead of 3. He was then allowed to go home for a month to get his items into order. Now, within that month, that was the August, within that month, our house was attacked many times, and suddenly our house was burnt. It wasn't burnt totally down, but it was damaged very badly. And when he went back to court for sentencing, the sentence said that he had burnt the house down. He had burnt the house because he wanted a lesser sentence. That meant making me homeless and my daughter homeless. When he was sentenced, he went into prison and did his term from the September when he went in till the following February. But in October, he was again arrested for the actual arson of our home, and I was arrested and charged with aiding and abetting that arson. The case was going to be brought in the April. My husband came out of prison in February, and he was in a remand home. Therefore, he was out. He'd been out a month to the April, and then he got rearrested and accused of rape on an underage girl. And that underage girl they had known about at the time of the first trial, but they hadn't put the charges on at the same time, even though they'd investigated. So come the April, we had 2 trials. He had 2 trials, one for the arson and one for the rape, and I was part of the arson trial. Because of this and the fact that he'd already done time in prison for a crime he'd never even committed, he got cold feet, and he ran away to Ireland is the basic, easiest thing to say. But when he'd got to Ireland, he realised what he'd done and he wanted to come back, but I had to check. He phoned me to say, check with the solicitors as to whether him being late back to the parole hostel would mean that he would have to go back into prison. The answer was yes, he would have to go back in prison because he was late. So he said, well, I've burnt my boats, so I'll stay where I am. So he was in Ireland without my knowledge of where he was for 5.5 years. So for 5.5 years, I did not know where he was. But I still supported him. After the 5.5 years, he was found because he had been working, but he'd been given redundancy because the place he was working at decided to hire cheaper labour from abroad. So he lost his job, therefore he couldn't live, and he signed on. And the fact that he signed on, we believe, because we've never found out why, we believe that 4 months later he was found and arrested and put in prison in Dublin. And he then had a year fighting his extradition for the crime he didn't commit, and we believe that the police had put in the wrong application, but the powers that be didn't think so, but the rules and regulations said they had. When he came back in the August of 2007, he was then remanded to prison for his trial in 2008 in January and February. I had a friend who was an academic in miscarriage of justice, be it the arson trial, because he could not make the rape trial, and he did a write-up for me and basically saying that the system did not work properly, and giving information as to what went wrong, given that the two boys, because the two boys and I had been on trial for the arson way back when. I'd been acquitted because the CPS did not have any evidence against me, and the two boys went ahead to have their trial, but they declared that they were guilty, and so they didn't need a full trial. And they tried to do that trial in my husband's absence, but they said it couldn't be done, so they had to do a second trial. It's both trials. My husband was found guilty. He was given 12 years, and he went back he stayed in prison from the 2008 and continued to maintain his innocence whilst putting in for an appeal, which I helped him with, and I continued to help him. Come late 2008, he started having medical problems, and it wasn't till March, because of the lateness of the doctor's actions, he got checked for cancer. They found not only had he got cancer in his lower body, but he'd also got cancer in most of his upper body. And that was diagnosed in roughly the August. He was given 6 months to a year to live. And on 22nd of December 2009, he died of cancer. He wasn't allowed out to the Macmillan home. Macmillan nurses were supposed to have been made available to go into the prison, but he never got those. And his prison cellmate was a man who looked after him for his last year of being ill. But for him, I always thank. After he died, CCRC told me that I could no longer apply for his to overturn his conviction, and I've left it at that. And since then, I've tried to help others to keep sane and to try and advertise the fact that false allegations are rife. They're done for many reasons. The system is not working as it should. It's not accountable. It's not transparent. And neither the police or social services are accountable for the actions that they carry out. If they were, then we would not have so many falsely accused. And the worst part is, for those falsely accused and who have been found not guilty in court, nothing happens to the accuser, and that is wrong. I'm not a victim. I fought that part, but it still leaves you with the aftertaste, and certain points you still get upset, and it's just unimaginable. And until you've been in that situation, you really don't understand how bad it is when nobody believes your word, when you have never ever lied. My previous job, I've had to have strong checks that I'm a decent person and all that. And my word has always been my bond. And when that's thrown at you, to be told that you're lying, it's dreadful. And the fact that my husband, it made it worse, because my husband was told he was a liar, and I knew for a fact from the little bit of evidence we were given at the time that he wasn't. And, well, as you can see, I haven't told this story fully through for a long time, and it still affects me.